Northern France, autumn 1944. A small field hospital sat intact beside a hedgerow, windows unbroken, beds aligned, routines unchanged. Nurses moved quietly between cots, marking charts, washing hands, trusting order. Outside, artillery felt distant, almost polite. Inside, the smell of soap suggested safety. It was a place still believing that procedures could hold, and that war had not yet found a way inside these walls. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. The staff were ordinary people assigned extraordinary patients. Marie, a civilian nurse, had learned to conserve gauze, reuse needles, and ignore hunger. Soldiers arrived daily, muddy and silent, carrying wounds that healed slowly. Fevers began appearing without cause. Sheets came back stained and stiff. No one spoke of infection aloud, but eyes lingered on thermometers longer than rules required. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. Command arrived without ceremony. A medical officer reviewed beds, clipped words short, and noted rising temperatures in pencil. Supplies would not be replenished. Evacuation was delayed. Quarantine was suggested, then dismissed as impractical. A single orderly was moved outside after collapsing. That night, coughing spread down the ward like a whispered signal. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. Marie noticed patterns others missed. Patients nearest the laundry corner worsened first. The water pump failed twice that week. With no disinfectant left, she tore unused bedsheets into long strips, boiling them repeatedly, hanging them as barriers between cots. The act looked foolish. It violated no rule, because no rule addressed desperation so plainly. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. The officer warned her to stop improvising. Cloth could not halt disease, he said, and time was scarce. Marie continued quietly, replacing strips each shift, marking dates with charcoal. She asked for old reports stored in crates. Wartime logs rarely read. Those who wish may follow such forgotten records, where small decisions first appeared in fading ink. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. Within days, fevers slowed. Coughs remained isolated. Men behind the cloth barriers slept longer. No announcement followed. The officer adjusted charts and avoided explanations. When a truck finally came, it removed the sickest only. The hospital stayed open, though something fragile had already been crossed, unseen by those passing through. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. At dawn, an order arrived to prepare for relocation closer to the front. Equipment was packed quickly. The sheet barriers were removed and burned. Marie watched smoke rise and said nothing. The outbreak was never named. It became a margin note, reduced to numbers that no longer climbed as expected. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. By evening, the ward stood empty. Beds were stripped, floors rinsed, silence restored. The trick with the torn sheets was not recorded as instruction or error. It existed only in memory, carried by those who walked away. The first breach had passed, leaving order intact and the cost unspoken. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. The convoy moved east under low clouds, carrying patients and staff toward a rail junction already crowded with wounded. Delays stretched into days. Some men weakened again during transport, their fevers returning without explanation. Marie recognized the signs but had no sheets left to tear. Barriers were now orders and signatures. Guards enforced spacing on paper, not in air. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. At the new facility, infection spread faster. Tents replaced walls. Water was rationed. Laundry was centralized and slow. Marie requested scraps of cloth and was refused. She washed hands until skin cracked. Soldiers were reassigned between cots by clerks who never entered the ward. Each transfer erased small precautions learned earlier. The disease followed movement, not intention. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. Military doctors argued statistics while men coughed beside them. Charts showed improvement overall, enough to satisfy command. Individual losses blended into averages. Marie wrote observations in a pocket notebook, noting distances, airflow, cloth. She hid it among personal letters, knowing unofficial words carried weight only if rediscovered later. Silence became a form of order. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. One night, prisoners arrived after a forced march, already feverish. Space collapsed entirely. Marie tore her own spare shirt into strips, tying them between stretchers. No one objected this time. Exhaustion dulled authority. The outbreak slowed again, unevenly, quietly. No commendation followed. By morning, 2 prisoners were dead, 3 lived. The difference was not discussed. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. Orders soon redirected the unit south. The tent hospital was dismantled, leaving scorched ground and discarded forms. Marie's notebook vanished during inspection. She did not ask for it back. The war required movement, not memory. Procedures were standardized again, stripped of the small deviations that had once mattered. What worked without permission rarely survived review. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. After the war, official reports cited improved sanitation measures introduced months later. No mention was made of torn fabric or improvised barriers. The infection was listed as contained through routine discipline. Marie returned to civilian life, never publishing her account. She assumed the absence of proof was final. Names faded, wards were rebuilt, and silence settled neatly over cause and effect. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. Years later, a partial ledger surfaced in an archive, pages warped by moisture. Marginal notes described unexplained declines in fever coinciding with temporary separations. The handwriting was uncertain, no author identified. Historians passed over it, favoring cleaner explanations. The trick remained stupid only because it lacked rank, and so it stayed buried among fragments. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter. What remains is an outline without certainty, a pause in the numbers where something small intervened. The sheets are ash, the notebook lost, the names unresolved. Memory survives only in scattered files and unasked questions. If you wish, leave a comment or subscribe to follow these forgotten traces, where war's quiet moments still wait to be read. Records were incomplete, names misspelled, dates crossed out, and no one expected these notes to survive the winter.